Hatred has conquered the world, and it flies the banner of the hooked cross. From Cornwall, Walhalda's garrison keeps a close eye on the battered and broken remains of England, to Moscow, where Cashew rules indifferently over a bloodied Reichskommissariat. The jackboot of the Nazi Reich is felt everywhere. Africa fares little better, carved up between the Iberians, Italians and Germans, barring tiny holdouts in West Africa. Only South Africa remains free, and even their grip on democracy is tenuous as the Boer people stir up ever more trouble, and the Reichskommissariats to their north fan the flames of Nazism. In the east, the rising sun has set Asia ablaze, though even now cracks in their empire are showing. Russia lies shattered, a dozen times, a dozen little fiefs having sprung up, bickering amongst each other under the shadow of the Luftwaffe. Even so, the Russian mayor is not to be underestimated, as they proved in the 50s, the remnants of the Red Army very nearly overrunning Moscow, before factionalism and hunger for power tore them apart from the inside. Thus it was in the rest of Russia as the country shattered. Every state imaginable and every ideology under the sun can be found in the wastelands of what was once Bukharin's Soviet Union. Even so, many in Russia's waste share a single ideal: to reunify the many peoples, march once more upon their old capital, and strike back at the Germans that brought them so much pain. Germany's old enemy to the west has fared little better. Though the Vichy government has clung on to parts of their land in the south and west of the country, as well as Algeria, France lies in ruins, as it has ever since the fall of the Republic. Brittany has been split off by the Germans, and Himmler has been given free rein over the north of the country, following his SS's insurrection during the West Russian War. Some say this was a reward from Hitler for Himmler's war eagerness, exemplifying the ruthless social Darwinism the Führer has fostered inside his own party. Others say it was part exile and part appeasement, that even the Führer himself feared Himmler and sought to remove him from German politics by stationing him in Paris. If this latter case were to be true, it has backfired spectacularly. Few reports leave his SS-run Ordenstadt Burgundian, and what little rumours abound beggar belief, even by the standards of the Nazis. Norway, Poland, the Baltics, my own Dutch homeland, Reichskommissariats beholden to the aging Führer, all. And aging he is. Hitler himself, the man that plunged Europe and the world into this dark age of genocidal hatred, has lived long to see the fruits of his despicable conquests. Yet, thankfully, even he is not immortal. His closest advisors are already jostling for position, and few dare hope the transition of power will be peaceful. Should the Führer do the world a favour and drop dead, the vultures of his own party will be picking at the corpse before it hits the ground. With any luck, it is hoped by many, this will accelerate the decline of the Third Reich and provide Europe's oppressed masses with breathing room at last. Others yet fear what may happen. Should the fanatics among the Nazi ranks seize power, we may yet see a terrible Third World War, this time with nuclear weaponry available from the start. What will happen when the Führer has drawn his last breath? None can say, but whatever happens, it will change the face of Germany, Europe, and the world in ways that may currently even be unthinkable. Let us hope and pray that these changes will be for the better. While one cannot imagine anything worse than Nazi oppression, one would not like to be proven wrong. from that particular point. To Germany's south lie their once allies, now united in a fragile alliance against the eagle of Europe. Italy, Turkey, and the Spanish-Portuguese Iberian Union, angered by Germany's mad, half-baked Atlantropa project that saw the Mediterranean ravaged and most of the region's coastal cities plummet into deep economic disaster, opposed German influence at every turn. Yet with the Reich's economic and political dominance faltering hard, these allies of necessity find ever fewer reasons to stick together, and already their eyes turn inward to each other, rather than to the Germans they were once so unified against. The New World stands alone against this unending tide of fascist hate, with the United States and the Organization of Free Nations maintaining the fluttering candle of democracy as best they can. Yet even within this bastion of liberty, not all is well. The utter demoralization brought on by the catastrophic defeat in World War II, culminating in the fall of Britain and the nuking of Hawaii, has thrown American society into complete disarray. Following the disastrous end to the war, the Democratic Party collapsed almost completely, merging itself with their nemesis in the Republican Party to form the Republican Democrats in order to save themselves from total collapse. Yet this Frankensteinian party is not the most bizarre turn in American politics. Seeking to overthrow the status quo, progressives and reactionaries have united in the National Progressive Party, an odd alliance of Dixiecrats and progressives, though fascists and communists alike have begun to flock to the party. So far the RDs have clung to power, but whether or not this will last remains to be seen. Should the fringes of the NPP secure the White House, the last holdout of democracy shall fade from the world, and it may perhaps never recover. It is in this nightmarish world that your humble chronologer, despite the odds, yet survives. One's time in Vught, sentenced to the camp for charges of sodomy and degeneracy, almost proved lethal, and when one's name was on the list for transport eastward to Reichskommissariat Moskowien, one fully expected to die in some Russian ditch after one's body gave out from unending hard labor. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. The academic expertise one's tenure at the University of Amsterdam provided, coupled with one's racial background, Aryans are in short supply in Moscow, along with most everything else, meant that the powers that be placed one in an administrative position. While the hours were still long, and the conditions unpleasant, one could work inside, away from the cold, and not wear one's body out laying rails or tilling the earth. Still, when the Russians attacked splintered and the SS and Wehrmacht began fighting, one decided to take a chance, to flee eastward, as so many had done. It seemed better to seize a chance at freedom and face likely death than to remain under the German yoke until such a time as your chronologer was no longer necessary and execution would become a certainty. Miraculously, as may be inferred from the existence of this record, one survived. One's journey was hard and long, and the spectre of death loomed over the entirety of it. It was not all bad, fortunately. Even now, with the constant din of Luftwaffe bombs exploding in the background, the light of human kindness and compassion remains alive in more areas of Russia than one would think. As your humble historian travelled east, one was aided as often as threatened or robbed, even provided with food, medicine, and shelter, minimal though it was, with no expectation of anything in return, barring news from the west. Eventually, one ended up in central Siberia, drawn by the promise of something impossible. a society of enlightened academics in the middle of the Russian wastes. It is here, in the city of Tomsk, that one now finds oneself. Upon, in one's broken Russian, explaining that one was an academic historian by profession, the gentlemen of Tomsk were delighted, and took one in as one of their own. One was given food, a home, new clothing, and citizenship, on one condition. One was to turn one's talents of historical research towards the benefit of the people of Tomsk. This is a task one took to immediately. The chaos of the past decades, combined with the Nazis' fervent hatred for anything intellectual, or any facts that put them in a bad light, has meant that despairingly little has been committed to record, outside those few parts in the world where the OFN yet guards sanity. By committing one's own memories to paper, as well as listening to every scrap of radio, reading every piece of paper found among the wastes, and talking to any refugee willing to share this story, one hopes that the full extent of humanity's tragedy can be remembered, that future generations may never make the mistakes we have. Though most of one's records are in one's native Dutch, or translated into Russian with the aid of one's invaluable assistant, Petya, the recording one is currently listening to serves a special purpose. It is recorded in English and stored in the utmost security, until such a time as the gentle scholars of the Central Siberian Republic may contact the United States of America and bring unto them a treasure trove of hitherto inaccessible histories and records. One can only hope one labours not in vain, that the people of Tomsk will not be cast to the mud by some horrific warmonger or another, and that the people of the land of the free remain vigilant against the many threats they face. For if the United States falls to tyranny, one fears all hope may truly be lost. Nevertheless, one cannot influence the happenings of a country an ocean across. One can only do what one is doing, and meticulously record that which has occurred, in hopes of one day bringing it overseas for further study. If even one sentence of what one writes can one day aid in the toppling of the hooked cross, one can rest easily. Until the time as to where one can pen the next record, je maintiendrai, and may God help us all.